We are MythVision. Welcome back to MythVision Podcast. I'm your host, Derek Lambert. Can we know right and wrong without God? Let me read you something real quick. The question of whether or not morality requires religion is both topical and ancient. In the Euthyphro, Socrates famously asked whether goodness is loved by the gods because it is good, or whether goodness is good because it is loved by the gods. Although he favored the former proposal, many others have argued that morality is dictated by and indeed unthinkable without God. If God does not exist, everything is permitted. And this is a quotation from Dostoevsky. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Echoing this refrain, conservatives like to claim that declining moral standards are at least partly attributed to the rise of secularism and the decline of organized religion. That is in Zuckerberg 2008. Well, we're going to talk about right and wrong, religion, God. How can we know? And what is right, right? We've got all these books, but today I want to introduce our guest, and that is Tom Jump from Jump YouTube channel. What is up, my brother?
Uh, Dostoevsky.
Oh, I can't pronounce jack squat. Well, that's part of my intro, right? Not pronouncing things correctly. That's how they know it's Myth Vision, by the way. So, but
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm doing good. Great to be on. Great to see you. You have an awesome background, by the way, and your hair is just amazing as always. Still jealous.
thank you. Zeus does my hair every morning, and so I just make sure that it's shiny and bright and good to go. Look, everyone, go subscribe to his YouTube channel. I should actually share the screen and let everybody see it. Where did I pop this thing up at? Okay. But yeah, we're going to be discussing this. Of course, those who are tuning in, please feel free to super chat your questions. I'll be happy to take them. And, Tom, he's been doing this for a minute now, debating other atheists, other Christians, other I've seen him do it with Muslims who are talking about miracles in the Quran. Like, you name it, if it can be debated, Tom will probably do it if he has a different opinion. He's more than happy to get in there. He has nothing to be afraid of. So go show him some love. Go support him. Subscribe to the channel. See what he has going on over there. Join the discussions. He's also on Discord all the time. So if you need something to do, and you just need a social environment of like-minded skeptics, he's the kind of guy you want to go and jump into the discussion with and learn a thing or two. You might disagree with him on a thing or two, and he'd be happy to have those conversations. So up front, show him some love. If you're a fan of MythVision, please go check out Jump and let us know what you think, of course, in the comment section. So let's get straight to it. The reason you do good is because there's secretly a god in the metaphysical realm right now, like pulling strings, right?
Sort of. I mean, clearly it's the chair. The chair is the god. Just spoiler alerts. But yeah.
Spoiler.
So the argument obviously isn't that atheists can't be good. Like they think that you can be good because there is a god out there to ground the goodness. The real contention in theistic morality is the idea that there's nothing that can ground morality unless there is a god.
Right.
So there isn't really a problem with atheists being moral, but what the Christian doesn't understand, the religious people don't understand, is how could there possibly be a ground of objective morality if there isn't a God thingy? And that's
Mm.
really the point of the argument they're making. They're saying, I can't understand how morality could possibly be objective if there isn't an ultimate sky daddy. And that's what they want. That's what they want as an answer to their question.
Right. Let me ask you this. It's a horrible analogy because it doesn't really compare to morality. But let's suppose I enjoy video games and other people don't enjoy video games. Like, is there some, since everything has an ultimate basis and a presuppositional foundation, if you will, based on this metaphysical concept of God, what would, can we use that as an analogy for like video games in some way, that people like or don't like video games? Is there a way to analogize this in some way?
Maybe.
I mean, I'm using an example like my wife she wouldn't give two craps about playing video games. You and me like video games. I really enjoy them. Is there some basis, foundation as to why we like video games and she doesn't? Is there some type of underlying absolute truth that is required in order to know why I like them and she doesn't? I
Sure. I
mean,
mean, evolution from an evolutionary standpoint, there's definitely reasons why certain people prefer one over the other. That's definitely a real thing that we can analyze psychologically. Like men typically value achievement, accomplishment more. Women tend to value acceptance, belonging more, and so men are more likely to value things that involve competition, like video games, where women are more likely to involve things that involve community and friendship. So it makes sense that some men predominantly like or more obsessed with video games than women are, and so there's definitely evolutionary reasons to think that or to understand why there are different proclivities for different people.
I make it's kind of a joke analogy. The point is like in one's like in one's worldview, if God is a grounding of morality, where does God play a role in that kind of worldview based on why I like video games and my wife doesn't? Am I more immoral because I like video games? Like I'm using some analogy just to try and point out, since there's always got to be a concrete reality basis for why morality or whatever. Can we do the same with video games? Can we do the same with football or some other type of sport? Is there something foundational in God as to why we enjoy these activities or do these things? So I took it off morality just for a second to kind of make a point. We can explain this in the natural world. There's plenty of reasons, whether it's physiologically, our own cultural concepts that we've developed with socially and whatnot. But in terms of foundational, people can't imagine there's no good. You can't even say something is right or wrong. Or atheists say all the time, man, that's evil. What's evil? You don't have a God telling you that's evil. You don't have a daddy upstairs telling you what's evil. So how can you say that that's evil? But I do have a super chat. So if you wanted to respond to that and then we take a super chat, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah, sure. So I think it's the same thing of like if we're both standing on like a mountain or whatever and we see like what looks like an ocean in the distance, probably a mirage, could be a mirage, could be an actual ocean, we don't know yet. And somebody says, "Oh, look, an ocean." And he said, "Well, how do you know that? You don't know if it's a mirage. You don't know if it's an ocean." Well, there's
Mhm.
some phenomenon there that we experience. We know there's a phenomenon there, and whatever's causing that phenomenon is going to be some physical thing in the world we see around us. So we can say that morality, regardless of whether or not there's actually an objective morality out there or not, we know that the phenomenon is something we experience, and we can look for the patterns in that phenomenon to try to figure out whether or not there is an actual ocean out there, or if it's just a mirage. And so we don't need to start with the conclusion that, oh, well, we know what the ground is. We're going to say it's automatically a sky daddy and then start with our conclusion. No,
Mhm.
the atheist morality is better than that, because atheist morality starts from the ground up. We start with, here is the phenomenon, here is the evidence, and then try to find patterns in that evidence to discern what it's going to be when we discover the actual ground of it. So that's, I think, the major best way to differentiate religious morality and atheistic morality is religious morality starts with their conclusion. Like, we're going to make up a grounds for it and say this is what it ultimately is grounded in. Whereas atheistic morality starts in the same scientific way, where it's like, we don't know. We don't have an answer for this question yet. It's an unsolved problem. But we can look at the evidence, try to make up hypotheses, look at the patterns, try to make predictions, and try to discover what it is. And that's why atheistic morality is better, because we don't start with our conclusion. We don't assume that we're right from the outset like the religious people do.
Okay, I have questions, of course. I'd love to continue. But first, Mr. Monster, thank you for the super chat, my friend. Always coming through. In Christianity, I can commit the most heinous crime. Then all I have to do is to give myself to Jesus Christ, and I secure myself a place in heaven. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, it's actually a really good point to illustrate the subjective morality of Christianity. Like, there's no objectively immoral action. You can do anything you want, murder, rape, pillage, whatever, and none of that is objectively immoral, because if God just says, "Oh, well, I forgive you," then the action stops having any consequences or stops being bad in any way. And if God commands it, it's actually good to do these things. So the fact that what is moral is not inherent in any kind of action itself, but is rather subjective to the whims of a god, shows that the religious based morality is actually subjective and not doesn't even qualify as an objective based morality, even if there was a god.
Mm. This begs the question, I guess. What do you think? This might be something that you don't quite know the answer to, but it's something to speculate on with me here. What do you think about the idea that if these religious constructs had morality that was flexible. For example, seems to be some outdated material we would find in these religious texts that are being used. Do you think that if they wouldn't have had, like, you were born a piece of dung, your righteousness is filthy rags, you're a horrible human out the gate by Christian standards and stuff, who needs salvation from God, if they had some of the more, maybe some Greek ideas, golden rule principles, and things like that, do you think there wouldn't be as much of a debate going on today? I mean, we have, like, slavery is acceptable within biblical texts, things like that. So if those things didn't appear there, as someone who's an atheist today, would you not have as much work cut out for you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. If religions taught something completely differently than what they do, we'd have a much different starting point to what we do now. Like if they taught that owning another human being is evil and we should never own another human being, that would have made it a lot easier to make progress in morality. It'd still be like fixed on these non-moving points of this arbitrary standpoint written in a Bible 2,000 years ago. But if they could have gotten it better, because there is, I believe, an objectively correct answer to what morality is. And so if the Bible was written with the right answers and not the wrong answers, we would be a much better society. But because the Bible was written with the values of the goat herders of the time period, they have many wrong values. They are objectively immoral to adopt these values, like slavery, like forcing your children to obey your parents, like essentially no women's rights, no LGBT rights. There's lots of immoral things in the Bible. Don't eat shellfish for some reason. Lots and lots of examples of just ridiculous laws that make no sense, that were predicated on the values of the people who wrote the goat herder texts and are then adopted by the people who still believe those texts today, even when they shouldn't apply, or it should be obvious that they're wrong compared to our understanding of morality today.
So the question, I'm going to ask some fundamental questions, and I'm going to pretend in a way, ontologically, I'm atheist, but at the end of the day, I'm going to pretend to try and kind of be an antagonist here for the sake of making this entertaining. How do you know that slavery isn't right? I mean, how do you know? There's Daniel Hikikachu, for example, who's an Islamic apologist.
Sounds like a Pokemon.
Yeah, it does. That's actually what they put in his thumbnails sometimes to try and like compare him. He's arguing that the Quran is accurate and that slavery, prisoners of war, killing blasphemers, things like that. He starts with the premise of his God is giving this morality in these texts, and he's just being consistent with his worldview and saying that these things are true. He argued with David Wood the other day, saying that your Trinity actually accepted the slaughter of men, women, and children in 1 Samuel 15. How do you deal with that, David? And I actually have to agree with Daniel, the Muslim who's making this point. Like, you got some good points, man. But how do you know that that's right or wrong? Like, what standard do you have to sit here and tell everyone that that isn't good?
Yeah, absolutely. So, from an atheistic standpoint, like I mentioned earlier, instead of starting with the Bible says so, or there's a magic sky daddy who I believe in who deems it such, we start with the evidence. We start to look at our moral intuitions and moral progress. We see, like, oh, someone punching a baby, that feels like that's wrong. We have these intuitions inside of us where we can, like, feel certain actions are worse and certain actions are better. Helping an old lady across the street, we feel like, oh, that's sweet, that's soft. We have these moral intuitions that some actions are moral and some actions are immoral. And we can look at the pattern in those across human society, across all of us collectively, what we generally feel, and find patterns in what we do find to be the moral actions and what we find to be the immoral actions. And we can describe those patterns with principles. There's many different versions of the principles. Principle of least harm, utilitarian, consequentialism. Mine is any involuntary imposition of will is immoral. We find these principles that try to describe the patterns in our moral intuition. And if the more accurate they are, the more they'll be able to predict or explain data from the past and the future. Because we see there's this consistent change in morality, that in the past we were more accepting of things like slavery, like demeaning rights of the LGBT community, demeaning rights of women. And we're less accepting of those today. And it's probable that in the future, as we continue to gain in technology and resources, we'll be even less accepting of those kinds of immoralities. So we can see that there's this pattern in morality. It seems like it's going somewhere. There's this phenomenon that morality is going in a direction, whether it's up or down, but that gives us a basis.
Isn't that anachronistic though? Isn't that a little bit anachronistic? Because what we think now is okay, guys slaughtering their firstborn sons to the god that they were noble, and like they believed they were doing the most moral thing you could possibly do, was give their firstborn child to a deity that they believed was there, of course. But nonetheless, like, isn't it a little anachronistic that some of the principles we think are intuitive to us weren't intuitive to them? To them, the most noble things to give this life that they know would be their heir, to a god that they believe in. I mean, to them that was intuitive. Like, isn't it anachronistic to assume that your morals today are objective for all humans?
Well, I sort of like, I wouldn't say that our morals today are necessarily the correct ones objectively, but it would be like saying that our progress in science today is significantly better or more likely an accurate view of reality than the goat herders were in the past. So I can say we've made moral progress in philosophy and science just like we've made scientific progress. And so it's no more unreasonable to say that our moral values today are more likely to be closer to what is objective than theirs were in the past, than to say the same thing about science. Like our scientific knowledge is probably more likely closer to be objective than the scientific knowledge of the people of the past.
Right.
So because we can see this consistent pattern that it's going in a very specific direction, and there seems to be progress in this direction, we can conclude that reasonably our current values are more likely to be closer to the objective truth than those of the past. Exactly the same reason of science.
Hmm. Got a super chat. Thanks for all the super chats, everybody who's coming in. Efont81, thank you. Can utilitarianism be moral if it saves billions?
That sounds like an appeal to consequence fallacy. So something isn't moral because it saves lives. Like the consequence of the action doesn't make it moral. Like for example, you can say killing a baby Hitler or whatever could save millions of lives. Would that make it moral? Well, no, you're still killing a baby. It's still an immoral action. Doing an immoral action, even if it has a consequence of more other positive actions, doesn't inherently make it moral. It's still, there's an immoral action there being done. So I think his question is, again, an appeal to consequence fallacy. It's just saying, well, we can assess the outcome of following this rule and then evaluate the rule as being moral if it has a positive outcome, which I disagree with. I don't think that's true. I don't think it's moral to kill any number of people to save a greater number of people. It doesn't make it moral. It's still, you're still killing people. It's still immoral. So I think that utilitarianism and consequentialism are immoral because they simply just take any bad action you do and evaluate it by whether or not it has a greater consequence in the end.
So I'm gonna pretend that my holy book is the Quran. How do you know that, man? I mean, you don't have anyone telling you. You're making this up as you go, and all of you atheists just make up stuff as you go. You don't have a moral foundation. You guys are just like, one day this is what you think, the next day that you're going to think something different, and we have a standard. We know that this is God's word. Of course, this opens up other cans of worms that I'm not going down, because then you'd have to argue with me as to why and all that. But we have a standard. You guys keep changing your damn minds. You don't know what you're talking about. How would you respond to that?
Well, that's actually a benefit of the atheistic worldview. So when you start with your conclusion and you assume you're right, there's no way for you to show that you're wrong. You can't ever correct your mistakes. You have mistakes and you're going to be stuck with them because you've already assumed you're correct. You started with your conclusion. It's just circular reasoning. In science, we don't do that. We don't start with, here is the ultimate foundation of reality, and then work backwards. We start with the evidence we see in front of us. Same with morality. We start with the evidence we see in front of us, and if we have better evidence, our views in the future can change. We are open to new evidence, which is the difference between our view and the religious view. It may seem more emotionally fulfilling to say you have this ultimate sky daddy who's telling you everything, and we could, from an atheistic perspective, just make up the same thing, the spaghetti monster or whatever, to ground our morality. But the more intellectually honest and productive way to go about answering what the moral questions are is to look at the evidence and follow the evidence wherever it leads. Like, it's not to hold just some dogmatic, ridiculous position based off of some archaic belief that you've made up and has no evidence.
So I guess it would boil down to you having to dispute the details of that evidence. Like, I'll give you an example. Marrying a 9-year-old, right? We hear this all the time as an argument atheists will make, not only atheists, ex-Muslims, Christians, etc., against Muslims. And they'll say marrying a 9-year-old is objectively wrong. And they'll go, no, she's hit puberty. Our God, has given this a thumbs up. Our prophet has done this. Some Muslims will argue that the prophet didn't do this. He never slept with her. She was 19. They make up a different argument to try and make the case. The point is, most scholars I talk to say, yes, she was 9. You would say, let's look at the physical, physiological, psychological implications of a woman in sexual act with an adult male at the age of 9, and what happens to that woman, like what kind of problems can arise from that in a actual physical way, whether it's psychological or actually physically. Would that be the approach you would take to seeing how that would be immoral?
Yeah, so we would assess the intellectual level of the person. Like if they have the intellectual acuity to consent, like the age of consent, then it's okay. But if they don't, and they're more like intellectually immature, then it's wrong because their psychology can be severely damaged from that, which is why we have laws against sexual interactions with minors. So yeah, we would, instead of looking at the holy book and saying the holy book from 2,000 years ago says this, we'd look at the modern data and say, oh, they can be severely psychologically screwed up for the rest of their life if you do this. So this is a huge risk we should definitely not do. And it's immoral to do this because there's actually a realistic basis of evidence that we have today that they didn't know back then.
Right, right, right. Yeah, there's a lot of learning that we're continuing to do. You mentioned objective morality, like there's this thing that's objective that we're aiming at. And it's, of course, to me, it's kind of a subjective thing, but it's to that analogy of like there's an ocean, but it's a mirage kind of. It's out there. There seems to be a standard we're aiming towards, but can that really be objective if we don't really have that? If that keeps shifting, if it keeps moving its ground. Right now, we put horrible criminals in prison. I think in 100 years, 200 years, we're going to look back. We're already doing it now, by the way. But I mean, like, I think the consensus will be that's not how you rehabilitate people you really want to rehabilitate. Like, if you want to lock someone up, throw away the key, someone needs to die for something that they're like just absolutely cannibals and serial rapists, murderers, whatever. Okay, got it. But a guy who's like carrying a pound of weed and gets arrested, has to spend 5 years in prison, comes out a bigger criminal. We realize that this is probably not a moral thing we're doing, and finding out this isn't how you rehabilitate someone's son or someone's daughter or someone's kid. We're trying to empathize with the human race and each other. Do you think that there's like this objective standard we could maybe finally meet and go, oh, we figured it out? Or do you think it's going to continue, the goalpost will continue to shift as we evolve?
Well, both. I think that yes, the goalposts are going to continue to shift. We're going to continue to see moral progress, and I think that there's a good reason to think that we're going to discover an objective thing in the future. Like I think science in the future is going to discover objective morality. I think they're going to figure it out and be like, this is the answer, problem solved, we're done, just like they do for gravity or any other thing in science. And I think that our moral progress is indicative of what that's going to be. I would say that as we look at how we treat criminals now and in the past, as we gain more ability to cure them in the future, we will stop putting them in prison. If we could just cure every criminal, we just let them all go. Like there'd be no risk anymore. They're not going to be criminals if we can just cure their desires to do crime. And so there's no justification for putting people in prison anymore. We would see it as immoral and heinous to throw people in prison for no reason if we can just cure them and let them go. And I think that's going to be one of the things that changes as the criminal justice system catches up with neurology, the advances in neurology right now, that, yeah, they're not really culpable. They're not to blame. It's not their fault. It has to do with...
Sometimes.
Well, I'd go more because...
Or you'd say all.
Yeah, I'd say I'm a strict determinist. So I think that the way people act is determined by their brain structure, their brain chemistry, how they were brought up, the chemicals interacted with them, how they were treated. All of these things are things they didn't have a choice in, that were forced on them. And so I think that... pretty much all criminals are victims of biology. Their brain was developed in such a way, that it was forced to have these desires that they didn't choose. It could be genetic, it could be environmental, it could be the parents, could be like just drugs or anything that affected them. There could be lots of reasons, but none of those reasons are the fault of the individual. And so I think that like all people, all conscious agents have value. They should all be considered morally significant, and harming anyone for any reason when it's not necessary to protect others should be considered immoral. So if we could cure a prisoner so they're no longer a threat to anybody else, putting them in prison any additional amount of time to just punish them because it makes us feel better, I see as nothing more than unnecessary torture.
This is a very interesting thing you just said, and it makes me think. I think that the catch line there is if we can cure, okay? Because really that's the big hook is if we can cure. But what would you do in a scenario? I get plastered drunk. I go get a fifth of vodka. I chug the damn fifth of vodka. I'm in a blacked out state. I jump in my vehicle and I run over two kids on the way to go pick up my kids from school. Don't even know it. Wake up in jail. There I am standing before the judge, and he looks at me and he goes, "Listen, you were determined by your social structure, environment, and physiologically to do this, and we know that it wasn't your fault. In fact, we know you technically because you didn't mean to do this, and it's not your fault. It was just the circumstances in your life that ended up causing you to this. Do you still see responsibility there, though? Are you do you think that that deserves consequences? If two kids died because of me, what would you, if you were the judge and you had a choice to do whatever you wanted with me, what do you think would be the moral thing to do?
Well, I would make it so that you could live in your own world where you could drive wherever you want and never hit anybody. So I would say if I could do anything I wanted to, I would give every single human being their own planet, their own universe, whatever. They could design the laws of physics however they want. So I would make it physically impossible for you to run over anybody unless they consented, essentially. And if I could do that, if I could just make it so it's impossible for you to run over anyone else in the future unless they consented, I'd let you go. Like, you're free to go. Like, if I could just design the world, the entire world, to make it impossible for anyone to be harmed without their consent, then there's no reason to put you in prison. You don't.
Let's not hype. Let's try to pretend this is reality. Like this actually happens in the world we live in. You're a judge in an actual court right now, and you know what you know in terms of your development of research and stuff. And you're looking at me. How would you go about handling that situation if you were in? If you could do what you wanted, you had the choice to make whatever decision you wanted. How would you handle someone like me if I ran someone over and I'm like, Your Honor, I really don't even remember. And my wife just left me. I'm going through the most difficult times I've ever been through. And I give you all these circumstantial pieces of evidence that make you go, well, damn, I do feel bad for the guy, but there's two kids dead now. How would you today, if you had, they put the robe on you and they said, you're judge, how would you handle me?
Well, again, you're comparing two things here. What is objective morality and what is pragmatic? So pragmatically, meaning what we have to do given our current limitations, is in order to, as a deterrent for future people to drive drunk, we put you in prison not for your sake, but to prevent other people from, or deter other people from doing it in the future.
Right.
So that would be the reason we put you in prison. It's not moral. It's still immoral for me to throw you in prison. Like any imposition on will, anytime we force another human being to do anything they don't consent to, that's immoral. But it's justified because we have to do it to protect other people. So prisons I see as themselves immoral. We're forcing people into a confined space they don't want to be in against their will, which is an immoral act that we are doing, but we're doing it because we have to protect other people in society. But as soon as we get rid of that, well, as soon as we get rid of that need, as soon as we can protect the other people without putting you in prison, it will just be seen as immoral to ever put anyone in prison, because the only reason it's justified is because it ends up protecting the people outside.
I was thinking, isn't that kind of utilitarianism in a way? I mean, or as the situation was, if we kill Hitler as an infant, that'll save us from what happens in Holocaust. But is it kind of like in a form of that where you're throwing someone in prison, you're doing a lesser evil to kind of save the larger evil of a larger audience of people?
Well, same actions, different labels. So when utilitarianism says we kill baby Hitler, they're saying it's moral. It is moral to kill baby Hitler because the consequences are better. Whereas in my view, it's immoral. It is immoral to kill baby Hitler. It might be pragmatic, it may be justified,
Right.
but it's still wrong. You're still doing an evil thing to have a good outcome. And so the difference between my view and utilitarianism is that I label all evil things as evil things, and they don't magically become moral just because they might have a positive outcome.
Interesting. So let me ask you this. There's a lot of people in the chat. Love you guys. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate the compliments and also your criticisms. Me and T Jump always welcome those. And we're just guys trying to figure things out. I mean, that's what I think all of these men, even the men who wrote the holy books, were basing it off of their own perception the best they could during their times. I give them that. I grant them that. If we lived in those times, I'm sure we would have probably gone along with the system as well in some way, shape, or form. Probably. Most likely. That looks to be the statistics. But Let me ask you this: where does God, in your research of finding out that you think we don't need God, God is not a necessary idea that is necessary to be moral, right and wrong, and that you would say it's not a foundational thing where morality comes from. Where do you think that happened in history? Like, how do you think the God thing has played a positive and negative role on morality in history?
Yeah, so definitely like early moral realists like Plato. Plato was a moral realist. He had Platonic objects and he thought there was a moral Platonic object. So it's just like an abstract form of morality out there. And that was what grounded morality. So even some of the earliest well-known philosophers had already accepted you could have objective morality without a God. And today, if you look at the Phil Survey's paper, the largest poll of philosophers in the world right now, it shows that most philosophers are atheists, about 70%, and most philosophers are moral realists. They think there is an objective, real morality. It's not subjective. And there's also like at the 60 something percent, I think. So most philosophers have essentially accepted, yeah, you don't need God for morality. It's not a thing you need for pretty much all of time. It's never been a requirement because there's many problems with the God hypothesis. Like, is something good because God said so, or did God say so because it was good for some independent reason? The Euthyphro dilemma, as you mentioned
Mhm.
earlier, and but there has been a lot of positive utilitarian impacts that religion has had, that the God hypothesis has had on the way people act. Having this fear of this all-powerful, all-knowing being who's always looking over your shoulder has deterred and guided many people to act in a better way all throughout time. And the fact that if you don't adhere to the rules of this God, your society, which also values this God, will reject you, has helped guide a lot of people to build a lot of better societies. So this is one of the reasons that religion is so popular across the world, because it does have evolutionary advantages, primarily being of the moral kind is one of the big ones, which is why there's such a huge correlation between the idea of religion and the idea of a God and the idea of morality. So there's definitely been a lot of positive impacts that the idea of a God has had on influencing societies, which is why most average people think you need a God for morality.
I think it's interesting taking the Euthyphro thing and talking about Socrates and just thinking about the Greeks. The Greeks were scratching their head and putting their, they're doing this on statues and stuff. The point I'm making is they were asking this question. Seems the Christian fundamentalists, Muslim fundamentalists, you name it, like pretty much fundamentalist of any religion, they all are already like, we got this figured out. Morality comes from God. But they're still asking questions. The Greeks were kind of scratching their head, like we see with Euthyphro. Is it because morality is good that the gods love it, or is it good because the gods love? They're asking these questions. They didn't have it set in stone, yet they seem to be, for their time, a moral society. And some had gods, and some had different understandings of what the gods were. Are they just physical objects? Are they, some of them were even atheists, but not. It wasn't the common thing in the fifth, sixth century BC, but that's, I think, what we're trying to do today is kind of ask these questions. And the religions are kind of trying to say, no, this is our standard, and pull ancient text into the future to bend the meaning of words. Slavery was indentured servitude. He was just going to work at his local Burger King, no different than today. And this is why we skeptics are like, no, you just want to have your book say what you think today, works moral wise, and you want to just bring that into today. What are your thoughts about Christians doing that, or other religions trying to, pull it into our time?
Well, I'm actually okay with that. So even though clearly like they're just making stuff up so that they can still
Right.
believe their book, that's still progress. So if we compare Christians of today to Christians of 1,000 years ago, the Christians of today are significantly less violent and inhospitable to lots of groups than they were 1,000 years ago. So back 1,000 years ago, if you say, is slavery okay? They're like, yes, the Bible specifically says slavery is okay. I get to own you, and there's no debate about it. But today, they're like, oh, no. Slavery, as we understand it, is totally wrong. They just mean more the indentured servitude thing. So the Christians of today are far more benign than the Christians of 1,000 years ago. And so the fact that they have to use ad hoc reasoning to try to fit their Bibles morality into today's morality shows that they have also been affected by moral progress. They've also been affected by the cultural shift from the past to our current moral values of today, and they're trying to make the Bible fit that. And so even though they're still believing this archaic book, which can hold them back quite a bit, it's still a significant amount of progress compared to where Christians were 1,000 years ago. So I'm happy. I'm happy they're doing this. I'm happy they're not just saying
Yeah.
the Bible says slavery is okay, slavery is okay. Now
Yeah.
they've moved a
Yeah.
little bit in the right direction.
I'm so with you on that, actually, because I've been interviewing on Islamic material, and you know how difficult that can be, especially when you see there are extremists in every religion. You got white nationalists and things like that in Christianity, but when you have like entire countries like Afghanistan being taken over by these extremely militant groups that are politically, of course, and religiously motivated, you kind of scratch your head and go, okay, what version of Islam are these guys proposing? And it's very Taliban like, and it's medieval. It's eye for an eye, tooth for tooth. Let's take some people out. And I like the Muslims that are trying to progress, even if I think, well, I think cognitive dissonance is playing a role and they're trying to hold on to something. Okay, why, and a lot of the ex-Muslims that I talk to that are friends of mine, they're trying to like make these progressives that are willing to engage and discuss and not just cut your head off, like look at their own book and go, no, 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 your book says this, and this is why I left this religion. And it's like, well, sure, you can spend all day yelling and trying to convince them that the book has got some pretty bad things that we wouldn't like today, but really, what's the goal here? What's the goal? I don't think we're going to convince everybody to deconvert from their religion. So I think the progressive path, or I like to call it it's kind of what we call harm reduction. Even with addiction, this goes into a whole nother thing that I've been dealing with. Like, I'd rather give people syringes and help them because I know they're stuck than have them come up with HIV and all of these STDs and diseases on the streets. Well, they're addicts. Screw them. You hear that mentality from a lot of Americans today. It's like, screw these addicts. They're pieces of crap. They deserve what they get. But I know because I came out of it, and like it's not like that. So anyway, I rabbit trailed off. Did you want to comment on anything?
Oh yeah, for sure. So I think that's one of the things I really like about the progressive Christian movement is that they're continuing the moral progress even further. They're being a lot more accepting of the LGBT community, and I think that the progressive Christian movement is going to be the natural next step for Christianity as a whole. So as we progress over the next few hundred years, I think progressive Christianity is probably going to be the standard, and replace the current more like, I don't know, Protestant and Catholic eras. So I think even the Pope is far more accepting of the LGBT community now than the previous popes. So this progress that we're seeing, moving away from the more literal interpretations of Scripture to the more moral interpretations of Scripture, seems to be a consistent pattern throughout time. And I think that over the next generation or two, we're going to see Christians move even further to the more progressive era, into like progressive Christianity, just like today we're seeing people apologize for slavery by saying, oh, it's not real slavery. So I think that it's a good thing that Christians are making that transition. So even it's not like a full acceptance, the fact that they have to make apologies for what the Bible says and reinterpret it to fit the morality of today is a good sign that we as atheists, our secular morality is making progress in society. Morality is moving forward, and we're overcoming the religious hurdles of 2,000 years ago. I also got a super chat on my end, if you don't mind.
Yeah, take it. Can you pop it up on the screen?
I don't think so.
Yeah,
it's on my YouTube. Like I could like screenshot
read
it or
it.
something.
Read it. I'm down.
So Don Fullman asks, what is the difference between will in the way you use it and free will in the way theists use it? Because one of the big questions in morality is, how can something be moral if you don't have free will? Like if you didn't choose it, if you're not at fault, like if the criminals we were talking about earlier aren't at fault for their crimes, how can they be considered moral? And the way philosophers answer this is like some form of compatibilism. We say that even if you don't have free will, you still have will. You still have a brain that's able to make connections and decisions to some extent. And even though they're all predetermined by some universal forces that we can't calculate, we can still hold you accountable for the fact that your brain, as long as it's operating in the way that nature has produced it, is still in some way accountable to the actions you do. So if you're a criminal, like if you mentioned you drink a bunch and run over kids, we still have to treat you as if you were a danger to society, because you are. You could still harm other people. And so the way your brain is organized, even though it's not your fault, we still have to protect the rest of society against you by locking you up. And so we have will, even if it's not free will, and so we can still morally engage with the world and say that that person is moral, that person is immoral, even if they don't have free will, even if they're not ultimately to blame. Their brain constitution, that the way their brain is a moral way in that it's predetermined to help other people, or it's organized in an immoral way in that it's predetermined to harm other people. So we can still make those assessments without free will.
Interesting. Real quick, David, when he said white nationalism isn't a religion, these guys suffer from Americanism, another religion. I don't know where he's coming up with that. And getting your national viewpoint from mainstream media is stupid. That's interesting. A lot there to say. But let's use the Ku Klux Klan. Are they a religion? Seems very much that they're religiously motivated, even if they're politically motivated as well. When you look closely at the Ku Klux Klan, I'm just using that as an analogy. They're definitely not the popular opinion in the United States anymore. And maybe at one point they were. But I know a guy who did an interview on Soft White Underbelly, which is this like really well-known YouTube channel. If you haven't seen it, there's very interesting things. But guy dressed in purple robes, purple hat, Ku Klux Klan member, explains how he became one. He was a white guy just walking in Walmart. Another white guy with a rebel flag on his t-shirt walked up to him, and he noticed he was wearing a rebel flag as well. Handed him this paper, was just saying, "Hey, come out here. We're gonna have a meet and greet on Saturday, and Saturday or Sunday, either way. Come out, hang out with us." They had a bonfire, they had grill going on, and all these guys with motorcycles and trucks and just country boys enjoying life. And then there was a guy who gave a sermon, and he quoted places in the Bible that this man had never heard in any church about the seed. And of course, modern interpretation of ethnicity and things like that don't mix, going from Ezra and Nehemiah in the Hebrew Bible. You need to stick to your own kind. And this guy believed in the Bible already, so he's already kind of primed to accept what the Bible says. And he thought this guy's preaching directly from the Bible, making his point about this ethnicity and like sticking to the white kind and all this. This guy was fully convinced by the pastor that this was a better understanding of the Bible than what he'd been hearing in the churches around. And it's like very religiously motivated, the whole Ku Klux Klan, movement. So maybe when I say white nationalist, you maybe are thinking of something else, but I'm also thinking Ku Klux Klan. I'm thinking white race, power to the white man, fist up, the whole nine. That's what I was thinking of when I was particularly pointing out like that wouldn't be good. Just like a lot of Muslims look at Taliban and say that isn't good. A lot of them. I'm not going to say everyone, but there's a lot of them, and that's what I was trying to get at that point. Yeah, I'm caught up. I just wanted to mention that so that people understand that goes, and it taps into Christian identity stuff. Like we had a little comment here, Box Fencer mentioned, but if you look into Christian identity, British Israelitism, they think they are the lost Israelites, and it's this ethnicity crisis that the people think they're somehow ethnically descended from the lost Israelites, which were chosen by God. Who doesn't want to be special, right? And we are. And then it became, well, America was actually also this, because when Britain lost its power, they had prophecies, all the stuff that they did. As usual, we're getting off topic, but I just wanted to like bring that up and mention those things for people who aren't aware of what can happen, hijacking these religions to your own angle.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, just to comment a little bit about your first question, like, is the KKK a religion? I mean, it was definitely Christian, so it's a Christian organization, pretty much. And because those texts are written from the past, you can find very abhorrent texts, very very abhorrent statements in them, which you can use to justify very bad positions today. It's much harder because people have progressed morally and they don't accept those interpretations anymore, which is why I'm so glad that Christians are taking the more progressive route and saying, "Oh no, that's not real slavery. It doesn't. The Bible doesn't really condone real slavery. It's just kind of like figurative. It's a figurative slavery, figurative slavery." And so I'm really really glad that Christians are doing that because of that reason, that the KKK can use those and take them in the very literal interpretation that they were used back when it was written, and be more like the original Christians, which is not a good thing. So I'm really glad the Christians are using ad hoc reasoning to try and make their Bible fit moral society today.
Yeah, same here. I'm definitely a fan of that. Yeah, there's so many issues that come to mind, but I'm all about that objective and that subjective. You mentioned something about determinism that you said there's like incalculable, what did you say? There are powers that be, incalculable powers that be. Someone's going to interpret what you said there to mean what you're really saying is God is really the invisible Pied Piper, as who was it? Einstein said everything dances to the flute of the invisible Pied Piper. Now he's probably thinking more along the lines of who's the famous heretic Jew that came up with Spinoza, more of that kind of concept of the world and the universe. But what are your thoughts about that? What if someone says, "Look, I grant everything you said there, but I mean, Spinoza's God." What are your thoughts about that?
Well, yeah. So pantheism. Pantheism is a really interesting position. Einstein was definitely not religious because he believed in essentially just nature is divine. So there's no conscious mind out there, even though he used figurative language for God. He specifically was asked this in many occasions where I think one journal quoted him as saying something about God, and then he rebutted them saying, "Oh, no, 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 I don't actually believe there's a conscious God. That was figurative language." And he actually wrote that himself in a response to them. So, but this idea that nature itself is divine, like I'm totally fine with that. Like I'm totally cool with the idea that there's this non-conscious just force of nature, and that we can be in reverence to the fact that nature itself is a divine thing. Like I think consciousness is kind of divine in that way, that consciousness matters. Consciousness has value in it inherently. As long as you don't say that there is some invisible man in the sky that created everything, then yeah, just saying like there's laws of physics or quantum fields or whatever, and that's divine, like pantheism, I'm okay with that. I don't think there's a problem with that. I think there's only a problem when you say something like, there's this guy who commands us to stone that person who worked on the Sabbath, and you're saying this with no evidence, and he's divine and we have to do it. We have to stone the person because the divine guy said so. If you're saying that, not so much. Even if you're just taking the more deistic approach, there's a guy in the sky, but he doesn't tell us anything. Like I'm okay with that too. It's only the part where you're starting to make these dictates about how people have to live their lives and how you have to punish them if they don't,
Right.
and there's no evidence to support this God at all. That's where the problems come in.
Would you also go a step further with me on this and suggesting I don't care that people can believe whatever they want, right? The thing is, from the ideology I came out of condemning people to hell, there are actual physical repercussions to teaching people a traumatic doctrine like that, especially since we all are mortal. We're all going to die one day. So it's like today we're starting to find out bullying online. This is a real problem. Now, I know we laughed about this back in middle school and high school, and we joked, made gay jokes and laughed and punched each other, and picked on the kid down here and all that little things. And you start realizing over time, like that kid has feelings, like that really affected that person. And so I tried to help, those kids in school. When the bully picked on them, I tried to go and help them. That's one of the things my dad did teach me. He instilled that in me. But my point is going around telling people they're going to go to hell. There's repercussions in that. Even if you're not picking up a stone and throwing it, you're trying to teach an ideology that's condemning someone and creating fear and possibly trauma with these ideas. Would you also say that that is morally wrong?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that there are lots of harmful things that the Bible teaches you, makes you afraid of hell, and that every time you do anything that's just normal human biology, you've probably sinned against God and you need to ask for forgiveness for no reason at all. And that's definitely psychologically harmful. But to take the devil's advocate approach here,
Mhm.
or probably say God's advocate approach here, and just as bad. The Christian view or the religious view is that religion is so popular because it's had evolutionary advantages. So even though there are many negative things that you get from teaching kids religion, there's also some positive things too. And the question is like that utilitarianism thing, like which is there more good or more bad? And that I think is where the debate is. Obviously, there's lots of harm from teaching kids religion, but it can also instill some good values too. And so
Mhm.
even though there is a lot of bad things in there, I don't think we can just ban it outright or convict parents of child abuse for teaching their kids, because there's also some good things that help a lot of kids.
I mean, look, Jesus taught the golden rule. That's pretty common when you look at it. You find out the golden rule was actually taught by Greeks prior. I mean, this is a common trope. So sure, these religions have what we call common sense applicable wisdom in them. I don't rule that out. I'm saying the harmful stuff, going around telling people they're going to hell, or actually applying a theocracy based on your book that you think you deserve to rule the world, and you're going to end up trying to make sure everyone else does too. Those are the things I'm trying to get at. At the end of the day, people are going to believe things, and it's not, to me, even if I think naturalism and an atheist, position makes more sense, it's not ridiculous for me to think versions of theism are possible. And I'm not like, I'm with Graham Oppie on this. I think it's a little more ad hoc. It's much more simpler to go with the natural view all the way through and through. But it's not ridiculous to think that there could be something that did cause all this, that was an agent of some sort, whatever. I don't know how to define or what to try and explain that. I don't think that's ridiculous either. It's when you now apply that to a book by a man who walked on water, who rose from the dead, who's going to send you to hell, cook you forever, and then I should do this and that to my neighbor because of this and this and that. That is when you start going, okay, man, you crossed the line. Let's back up a little bit and try to teach people away from those more fundamentalist, harmful views. But we've really rabbit trailed into this particular thing. I hope I'm not taking you too far off the course.
Fine by me. I'm cool with it.
Awesome. Let me ask you this: you want to spice things up and invite one individual on at a time to have like 2 minutes to ask questions, maybe compliment, maybe criticize, whatever, and just make it a little bit fun?
Yeah, sure. I think that's one other thing I wanted to mention is that having these kinds of open conversations is a really cool thing. I think that churches and religions do a lot better than the atheist groups. I think that the whole idea of church and having a group place to get together is a real cool one. And as long as you avoid the pedo priests or whatever, it's a pretty cool establishment. And I think I'd really like to start an atheist church. I'd like to start a church where we can have events like this, speakers, TED Talks, conferences for atheists, and get like some atheist pastors. We could even get some of the clergy project, the ex Christian pastors who've like converted, but they can't leave their jobs. We might give them a job at an atheist church to host these events and stuff. I think that'd be really cool. So I'd really like to start a legitimate atheist religion 501c3 where we can host these kinds of events and have more conversations like this.
Wow, that'd be interesting. All right, I'm opening up the room for one at a time. We'll see how long we can do this, and hopefully everybody comes on as respectful. We can have questions. Of course, I'm going to limit their time. How much time should we limit? Because I want to allow other people to be able to pop in.
I don't know. It kind of depends on the question, I guess, but maybe like 3 to 5
more
minutes.
Than I was going to say no more than 5. Just if it's interesting, we'll push it out, and then I'll have to cut everything off. So I just sent the StreamYard link on my side. Do you need me to put that in the private chat for you to share it on your side, or?
Sure. Don Fullman said he's a new patron to MythVision. I love your work.
Awesome. I know who Don is. Awesome. Cool. All right. Thank you. I just shared that in private chat. So if you wanted to go ahead and share that, let me pop that up on the screen real quick here. Where did it go? Okay, here it is. All right. So there's a StreamYard link, ladies and gentlemen. Let me go ahead and pop one person on at a time. 2 to 5 minutes. Here we go. David, what is up, man? Welcome, man. What would you like to ask Tom or mention or a comment or something? I got an echo in the background.
I'll only take 2 minutes. I'm glad that you finally admitted.
He's great.
Well, he's the first atheist that I actually agree with about atheism. I'm sorry, I'm all the way in the back of my house, so you shouldn't hear the echo from the TV.
Just go ahead, my friend.
Can you hear us? Are you still there?
All right. But atheism being a religion. Am I lost? There we go. I turned the TV all the way down. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear us?
Hello?
I don't think you can hear us.
Me?
Yes.
I can't hear anybody.
Call back.
Okay, I got it.
Okay. All right. I don't know what's going on with it. Yeah, so we'll go ahead. Hey, David, call back when you hear this. I appreciate you calling in. I just don't want to keep waiting forever. I think he's trying to get at that. You're admitting, mind you, get ready. This is what I think this is heading into. You are admitting that that atheism is a religion, Tom. It's finally out there. Everyone who's an atheist needs to stop acting like atheism is not a religion. Pull your head out of your butts, you atheist liars. Just admit you worship the God of atheism. No, I'm just kidding. I wonder. I don't know. Maybe
well, I
I'm
mean, so
reading.
I'd like to adopt that. So I want to take the Christian criticism of atheism as a religion, and I want to turn it into a religion, just to say, yep, atheism is a religion, and it's better than yours. We have a better objective morality than yours. We have a better moral system than yours. We have a better society than yours. I want to take their criticism, which is totally a straw man of atheism, and just adopt it. I want to just like take it and make it a part of atheism, just to throw it in their face. Like, yep, we have a religion and it's better than yours.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, most atheists aren't on that level of trying to do that. But I will say there's practical, like pragmatic reasons to have a social, get together. What we would call what is it? The ecclesia, right? The church of the called out ones. People who come together and they're just trying to unite on these things. So, but yeah, the idea that ontologically an atheist is religious, that's I think the point he was trying to make. I don't know. He didn't say enough for me to be able to do that. So I'm just trying to guess at saying that. Hold on. He private chat us. Please excuse my lagging connection. I think I'm ready now for my encore. Okay, Mr. Monster, hold off. I'm gonna bring you on next. David, tell us what you really think. I think we got a serious lag.
I think he just disconnected. Yeah. I don't think he's ready.
Yeah, it's not working, David. All right. Well, we got to figure that out. We definitely got to figure that out. I think he's calling back. All right, Mr. Monster, what's up? Welcome back.
Oh. Hello.
What's up,
Hey.
man?
So
You're loud. You're yelling.
You're yelling. Okay. All right. So we're on the topic of morality, and I did put in the super chat before, which is kind of my main point always with this faith, is that they say that people without a religion, or people who are atheists, or people who just don't believe in God in general, or just any religion that's not Christianity, your morals, they're dependent on what some higher power had to say. But in reality, we can't base it off that. You have to base it off of, like, Arnwell made it. I can't say it verbatim because he said it so perfectly, but it's like, what could possibly hurt another person emotionally or physically, or impede them from living their best life, would be considered something morally wrong, and something that would benefit or be positive or encourage somebody's life could be morally positive. But I do feel like there's a gray area that a short little thing I'll explain is, for instance, I lived in Las Cruces for a short period of time, and at one point I had an anthill appear in my house. This is very strange, but they came through the foundation in my house, and there was an anthill in my closet. So for the ants, this is beneficial. This is morally good for them. They get a whole new world to live in. They get tons of food to eat, people to bug. Maybe they're not intentionally trying to bug people, but they have access to food faster. They have access to shelter faster. This is their home. But for me, this is now bad. These things are infesting my home. They're heating my food, biting us in bed. This is wrong for me. So would it be morally okay for me to completely wipe out their civilization because they're affecting my life? They're impeding everything that I do in my life. But then again, these are a lower life form. They're like not conscious like humans are. But it's just a small example of, like, there is some sort of a gray area, but I do believe that we don't need a higher power. You don't need a higher source to tell you what you can and can't do, because that will lead to specific, like in the Bible, how it says thou shalt not kill, and you can get around that by saying, well, God can tell you to kill somebody, So then what's his morals? Does God have morals if he's willing to tell you to cut open a woman and slash the child? It gets complicated like that, and I just don't see how Christians can see that as, yes, that is the only moral way to go, is following this higher power. Humans don't have a say in their morality. I don't know.
Okay, so let T-Jump respond to that. I think, and we've got 2 more people in the chat. I want to make sure, Mr. Monster, thank you for showing up, and I do agree with you on that. Definitely on the final thing you were saying there pertaining to Christianity. So thanks for tuning in, man.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really great.
All right.
I think that's a really great point. That, but we can solve that gray area he mentioned. I think there's a way to fix that problem, which is we need to make it so that every single conscious being, both ants and humans and animals, cows, whatever, every single conscious being can have all the things they need to survive and live a happy life. That's why I mentioned earlier, if we could just give every conscious being their own universe, they could do whatever they want with, that would solve the problem. That idea, that ideal world where everyone gets their own universe, is what we can use as our moral groundwork, the thing that grounds morality. That is the perfect world, a world where it's impossible to force any conscious agent to do anything they don't consent to. That would be the grounds of an atheist morality. And we can do that. We can build that world. That isn't just a fantasy world. That's something we can actually build if we had enough control over physics. And so I think that is the moral goal, where we can answer those gray area questions pretty clearly.
Interesting. Yeah, I got a super chat here before we bring someone else on. A is for alien. Thank you for the super chat. Church, as in a group of people that just have talks. I think the connotations of the word would deter people from going.
That's absolutely true. So there is a lot of negative connotations to the word church, especially from atheists, because they left church because of usually the bad experiences they have. But there's also a lot of positive connotations to the word church, a lot of community, a lot of friendships, a lot of family, people who you can depend on. Like, a big thing in church is if there's somebody in need, you can go to the church and say, oh, I lost my house, or oh, I lost my car. Is there anybody in the community who can help me out? And the pastor will go to the community and say it up on stage, like, hey, this guy's really in need. Can you help him out? So there's a lot of really positive aspects to church as well. And so even though there are some people who would be deterred by the church label, I don't think that's a reason to toss the baby out with the bathwater, to use a overused phrase.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that super chat. All right, we're bringing on James. What is up, James? You are on air.
James, a person.
Sorry, I was muted for a second.
You're fine. Do you have a question for T-Jump?
So I have a couple of thoughts based on what you guys were saying. When I try to have these discussions with religious people, I usually try to avoid using certain loaded words like religion, God, morals, or atheism, because when you use these kinds of words, they're like trigger words. People hear them, and then immediately they infuse the conversation with their own baggage, what those words mean to them. And then you've got to do all this extra work of trying to disarm that process and say, well, no, that's not really what I meant. So if you want to use those words and sort of hang your hat on them, you can, but I find that it's more productive in conversation not to do that. And part of the reason is because I think it's important not to conflate atheism with secular humanism, because not all atheists are humanists. In fact, not all atheists are very nice people. You got bad people and good people on both sides of the fence, right? Mm-hmm. So you got these religious people that tend to think of atheism, not all, but a lot of religious people tend to think of atheism as this belief system, as this cultural movement, where they then say, okay, it was atheists who were these tyrants that did all kinds of horrible things in history. So, and the implication there, the narrative there, is that atheism then leads to wanting to kill Christians and wanting to kill Muslims and things like that. Mm. So in order to get past that, in order to avoid that kind of a stigma, we have to say, okay, let's keep this in mind. Atheism isn't a religion. It's not a value system. It's not a worldview. It's not a camp. It's not a club. It's not any of those things. It is simply a lack of belief in a God. So I think that these are very important distinctions to make, but I think it becomes harder to make those distinctions once we start speaking as if atheism is synonymous with the idea of a worldview or a value system, because then we've got to disarm all that problem that comes up with it. So...
right, but I think that's kind of the point. If you want to change the Christians' preconceptions, you have to address them, and to address them, you have to bring it up. So the whole point of adopting the atheist church, taking their language, is to show them that we can do these things from the atheist perspective, and to challenge their preconceptions and to diffuse them by defeating them, by showing that those preconceptions are wrong. Simply hiding it under the rug and not bringing it up, while it can be good for any kind of individual conversation, isn't going to make any progress in society. You're not going to change their preconceptions, even if you might have a more productive conversation. If you really want to make progress, you have to challenge their preconceptions and show them that they're wrong. So like when LGBT community became more commonplace and you got to know people who are LGBT, then it would decrease the amount of hostility Christians had towards that community by bringing it up. You have to show it to them and show them that those preconceptions are wrong, and that's what really causes them to diffuse their bigotry. If you just hide it, like what many people did before the civil rights movement, then you're not really going to make as much progress. So adopting their language in this way is a way to start to solve the problem rather than hide it under the rug.
I can see the validity in the statement that you just made. So I guess what I would say then is for everybody to realize, once you go that route, you're in for a much longer and deeper and harder conversation. Like you say, it's probably worth having that deeper, longer, and harder conversation, but just make sure before you engage with that, that's what you're up to having.
Yeah,
oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Totally right.
Good point. Thank you, James. I
Thank you.
appreciate you tuning in.
Thank you.
Thank you. You have a good day.
You too.
That was a good point. And yeah, you take the time. That's something you're really well known for. To spend time and time and time trying to explain these things. You know, what is the definition of atheism? And really, is it one thing? I mean, we had secular, or if you will, pagan, Roman rulers calling Christians atheists because they didn't have an image, an idol of their God, and so they're being called atheist. Well, we know they believed in God. They just didn't have a visual image of their God. So the definitions change. Time changes things. And anyway, I got a super chat if you want.
Well, yeah, but I think that's actually a really interesting point. Like, yeah, the Romans used to convict Christians of being an atheist as a crime because they didn't worship the Roman gods. Very interesting.
Yeah. And they didn't have visual gods. So like they would think you don't have a representative, you don't have an idol to show your God. So you don't actually have a God. This was the rhetoric, of course, is probably derogatory, but it was slanted on you atheists. You don't even have a God. Like we had pictures of Mithras and Serapis and you name it, these gods. You don't even have an image of a God. You say you believe in a God, but you don't even have a God. What are you talking about? You're an atheist. And that's like today people would go, no, that's not the case. And yes, that is what they thought of atheism as. Unless you had a representation of your God, they thought you didn't have one. Indo, thank you for the super chat. Whatever basis you have to derive objective moral truths from will in itself be subjective. But since God is always right and he created morality, whatever he says is true objectively true. Thoughts?
No. So like the first sentence, whatever basis you have to derive objective moral truths will in itself be subjective. Well, no, like if Platonic objects, like Plato's example, Platonic objects are a thing that exists subjectively. Objectively. It's an objectively thing that exists. So if you ground morality or you derive morality from some object that exists subjectively, then it wouldn't be subjective. It's an objective object. Or like in my view, I think morality is probably going to be a law of nature that we're going to discover, some higher order emergent property of physical laws. And I think that's going to be objective, just like gravity is objective. Simply saying that wherever you derive it's going to be subjective. I mean, maybe in the sense that it is a single subjective thing and not literally everything in the universe, it's a subject, but it wouldn't be subjective in that it only exists in opinion. It would be objectively exist. So that's weird. Well, the second thing, God is always right. But since God is always right, well, that's kind of begging the question. And he created morality. Whatever he says is true. Well, that just makes morality subjective. So if it's contingent on God's opinion, his ideas in his head, then morality is a subjective invention of that mind. It would not be objective. It would not be true independent of a mind or opinion. It would be contingent on a mind or opinion. So that's the definition of objective and subjective. Objective is true independent of opinion. Subjective is contingent on opinion. So that would, by definition, make it subjective. He couldn't create an objective morality by thinking about it.
That gets into the whole Euthyphro, like, is it good because the gods love it, or and back to square one we are again. But it's an interesting question, Indo. Thank you so much for the super chat, my friend. I really appreciate it. David, your video is lagging so bad, my friend. You may have to private message me your question. So let's see how delayed it is.
Oh, it froze.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can.
All right. I can't see any screens, so I'm just going to go by your response after I finish talking. So if you could give me a cue after you hear my voice.
Yep. Go ahead. Say what you do before we lose connection.
I turned off all my computers, my web TV's off, Fire
That's
Stick's
fine.
off.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
With the whole Roman executing Christians was because they believed that Christians actually believed in human sacrifice. That was Romans. The Roman army or the Roman government also went to the land or to the Corinth and overtook their governments because of the same thing. If you go back to the Punic Wars, where
David, we were specifically talking about religion and atheism being a religion at first.
Yes,
Did you want to talk about this other topic instead?
No. And atheism, how does atheism explain the ghosts that people say they're haunted by? And all of our leaders, how does it explain that Hillary Clinton was talking to some ghost of a political woman way back? I'm not doing much favor to my cause because of my hillbilly accent, so please forgive my sound.
My mom's from the woods of Florida. Trust me, I got some redneck on that side of the family. No biggie.
Well, but the knowledge that we have now of Christianity and the things that the Bible, it's actually archaeology is bringing these things to light. I mean, the rock that Moses hit the stone or his stick with is still split in the middle of the desert. The Mount Huron, where God ascended to talk to Moses, those archaeological finds are still out there. I don't see how after 2,000 years of religion that now we're going back to atheism, because that's the
okay. David, let T Jump give you a response. I appreciate you being kind and coming on. I know the stone you're talking about, by the way, and there's just looks like water had divided one of these stones, and it's usually a Christian thing. But go ahead, T Jump.
Yeah, Mount Horeb was not split by Moses. It was split millions of years before that, or hundreds of thousands of years before that. Archaeology disproves the Bible. It doesn't prove the Bible. The only things confirmed in the Bible by archaeology are mundane facts. Like in Harry Potter, it says King's Cross Station is there, and we look and there's King's Cross Station. Does that confirm Harry Potter? No. So the facts in the Bible are actually disproven by archaeology. Like the Exodus has been shown that there's no evidence of the Exodus. There's evidence it didn't happen. Global flood, there's literally not enough water to do it. All of the archaeological evidence says there's no global flood. Entire civilizations survived through when it was supposed to happen. All of the archaeology in the Bible of significant events has been essentially proven false. So not quite.
Or not verifiable, or not verifiable at all. So then
if you dismiss the books that claim that it is verifiable, but if you watch Sergio and Rhonda on YouTube, another great, and you know what, dude, I appreciate one common ground that we do have is the search of truth. I don't want to worship anything that's not true. I don't, and that's one thing that I believe that we have in common is the search for truth. My search, I'm an unemployed 48-year-old man that spends most of his day watching this stuff on YouTube, watching Sergio Aranda, and rest in peace to Rob Skiba. He passed away about 2 weeks ago, and his loss is definitely missed into the underground church of America. But there is a spiritual awakening coming part. I mean, it is. It's hard to ignore it with all this wickedness with child pedophilia and stuff like that coming to fruition, and the whole alien thing. I mean, that goes back to the book of Genesis. That's a religion, alienology. I mean, people. But if you look back with Aleister Crowley, he said he summoned a spirit in Cairo, the great Egyptian pyramids, and the spirit that he summoned was the first drawing of a modern day gray alien. And he said that was the alien or the spirit lamb. He didn't call it alien, but he did say now we call them angels and demons, but tomorrow we'll call them something else.
David, I appreciate it. We've been going. I got 3 guests waiting in the queue, and I really do appreciate you coming on and speaking with us. I'm going to have you go. I got 3 other people, and I could tell that where you're coming from. Trust me when I tell you, T-Jump and I disagree at the end of the day on these things. These are a lot of claims, and I've seen a lot of these videos over the past 5-6 years and things like that. So, my friend, you're always welcome to come back in the future if we ever do something like this and it's relevant. But I do appreciate you tuning in. You have a good day.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Did you want to make a quick comment? I've got 3 guys in the queue, and I've got a super chat that we can get.
As far as I'm aware, there is no evidence that Hillary Clinton spoke to ghosts.
Okay. There's a lot there that you wouldn't be able to unpack. There's so many different things that were mentioned, but YouTube has a rabbit trail for ideas out there, a lot. And a lot of these ideas are packaged in a way that if you're not looking into peer-reviewed, scholarship and stuff, you're going to kind of fall trap to some of these ideas, I think. And that's personally where I think I was about 5-6 years ago on a lot of these different views that were out there. And I mean, I was watching stuff. He mentioned Aleister Crowley. I was watching stuff like that. Like, this guy actually was in black magic and there was real things going on. Like, I was into this, but over time you start to realize that these claims come from various worldviews and stuff. So Crossover Maniac, thank you, says the ghost Hillary claims she was communing with was Eleanor Roosevelt. It was lightly touched on in the news back in the 1990s.
Yeah, I don't think there's any evidence it was like an actual event, though.
Yeah, I don't know anything about it. I'm just bringing up the super chat, and I guess this is something of a claim that she was talking to some ghost or something like that. But people talk to people all the time, dead or alive. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? You know how it goes.
Wait, where are these people talking to dead people? I must have evidence of this.
Yeah. Well, my point is, people, like, you've got John Edwards claiming he's hearing and talking to the dead on TV. There's people who do that kind of stuff all the time. And that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying there's any evidence that it's actually really taking place.
Derek, do you have something to tell us? Have you been speaking to dead people?
No. Got another super chat, and then we're going to get next guest on. Mr. Monster, thanks for having me on. I think this world you are envisioning, T, is very intriguing. I might not see it in my future or my lifetime, but I do believe we can achieve that next form of evolution, a Star Trek future.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, the Star Trek idea of a free society, no money, where you can just print food, so you can like provide food for everyone without them having to like pay for it. That is a huge step in the progress of human morality, and it will definitely change our moral intuitions for the better, for sure.
That would be awesome. No more starvation. Desi Neo, welcome on. I hope I'm saying your name right.
Yes. How are you?
Do you have a question for T-Jump? I want to try and limit our time as much as possible.
Yes, I have a question for T-Jump.
Thank you.
Hi, T-Jump. How you doing?
Pretty good. How are you? Was that your question?
No. Just one more question then. I just wanted a clarification from you, because I've heard you say that on many different streams that you believe in objective morality. Like, a lot of people say like morality is subjective. Most of the atheists I talk, because even if you go with religion, it's subjective to the God, morality. So, but you say it's objective morality.
Yeah.
The definition that I thought that objective means is independent of a mind. So if you're saying it's independent of a mind, being good or bad, morality, isn't it attached to a mind? If there's no mind, there's no such thing as a good or a bad. Like beating a kid or anything, any moral stance is only based on a mind. So if you're saying objective morality, and objective morality would be independent of a mind, how do you reconcile these two different things?
Right. So
Great question.
Morality is subjective if it's based on a mind. So if the moral truth is only true because a mind thinks it or whatever, that would make it subjective. If the moral law or whatever is a law of nature or a Platonic object or an a priori abstract or something like that, those things would all be objective morality, even if they only like apply to mind. So if a mind does X, it's immoral. If that's the moral principle, what would make it objective is if that principle describes something that exists outside of a mind. So if it's a law of nature, a Platonic object, an a priori truth, any of those things would be objectively true because those things exist independent of a mind. The fact that it only applies to things minds do doesn't make it subjective. And I think that's what your question was about, is that
Yeah, but I mean, it's just a little bit confusing because when you say, for example, let's say, killing a child, for example, you're saying that is objectively wrong, right?
Yes.
But the fact that it's a child and you feel that it shouldn't be killed, independent of a mind, has no meaning whatsoever. Like, that part, because a child, the concept of a child, your empathy, all of those things are attached to a mind. And deciding not to kill a child or to kill a child is based on your perception of, okay, that would be a bad thing to do. But independent of a mind, it wouldn't have any meaning whatsoever.
Right.
Killing a child or not killing a child,
Right. The sentence isn't morality. Morality isn't contained in the sentence. The sentence describes morality. So there is an existing object, like a moral law of physics, like gravity, or a moral Platonic object, like Plato's moral Platonism, or an a priori construct. Those things exist. They are like actual objects that actually exist that instantiate morality. And then we make sentences to describe those things. So our subjective sentences don't matter. These moral truths would be true even if no humans ever existed.
That's confusing. You're saying killing a child would
one more thing,
still
Desi,
be
and then
an
I gotta let
objective
you go.
moral, even if no child ever existed?
Yes.
Desi, I've got 4 more people in the
Okay,
chat,
I'm
so this will be
sorry.
the final
All
one.
right,
I'm just
thanks,
letting you know.
T-Jump. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Let me answer that real quick. So like,
Okay,
if there is a universe, like imagine if there were never any dinosaurs. If there was no dinosaurs in that universe with no dinosaurs, would the statement "there are no dinosaurs" be true? Well, yes, but there'd be no word of the word dinosaurs wouldn't exist in this universe. But that doesn't matter. The sentence we construct would still be true. The proposition would still be true, whether or not the word dinosaur exists. So the words we come up with don't matter to whether or not the sentence that we mean today in our current society would accurately describe the thing that exists. So if morality existed, like if it's wrong to kill babies or wrong to impose on anyone's will involuntarily, and that's an objective truth, it would be an objective truth whether or not any people existed. Like gravity would exist even if there was no particles. It would be a law of physics that permeates the universe that would still be there even if there was nothing to interact with the law.
Desi, thank you so much. I appreciate
Thanks
you.
for
Got a
taking my
couple more
question.
people. Yeah, have a nice day. This begs the question, though. His question's an interesting one because I'd like to just ask you this and then pull up a super chat and then we'll bring someone else on. What about if humans don't exist and an animal kills another animal, and it's literally in its nature to have to survive off of the species of another creature? If killing a human baby, we can go ahead and say is wrong. How do you do that with animals? If an animal absolutely, in order to survive, that's its diet, is it objectively wrong that it has to survive killing off another species?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is. Based on my morality, my objective standard of morality is the best of all possible worlds. A world where all conscious beings it is impossible to force them to do anything they don't consent to doing. I think that is the morally perfect world. So anything less than that, like if a hawk kills a mouse or whatever, a world where a hawk kills a mouse is a less moral world than a world where all conscious beings, the mouse and the hawk, are unable to force anyone else to do anything they don't consent to. And this would also extend to like aging. If you didn't want to age, it would be immoral to force you to age. Like time would be immoral for aging you without your consent. So for me, the standard of objective morality is a world where it is impossible to force anyone to do anything they do not consent to doing, which includes aging or being hunted or having to eat to survive. So I think that if we ground morality in that best of all possible worlds, then we can say, yeah, a hawk eating a mouse is immoral because that world, a world where that takes place or has to take place, is a more immoral world than one where it would not need to take place.
Yeah, it reminds me of Buddha and one of his stories, but also there was one of the I can't remember, one of the leaders in Buddhism or whatever had a mosquito bite him like 3 times. Finally, he smacks it. And they're like, you just killed the mosquito. Look, strike 3, okay, and you're out. Crossover Maniac, what about contractual morality, as in you don't get to kill someone who makes you angry, and in return, society won't allow anyone to kill you?
Well, I mean, I think that's an interesting system, but I don't think it matters. Like, you can say, what if I was contractually allowed to kill people? Would that make it moral? No, it wouldn't. So, like, we can say this is what kings used. Kings were contractually allowed to kill or do whatever they wanted with their people because that's how the society worked. Did that make it moral? No. So just because something is a contract doesn't make it right. Social contract theory, while it works in some cases, doesn't work in many other cases.
All right, final super chat, then we'll bring someone on. Stop Scamming Man, thank you so much, my friend. Ibn Taymiyyah, a Muslim version of Aquinas or Augustine, and often quoted by their scholars and apologists, concluded late in life that eternal hell totally contradicted mercy and must, in fact, be finite.
Yeah, absolutely. We can see lots of different people in both moral and in all different religions looking at the more abhorrent religion and say, oh, that doesn't work. Slavery bad, murder bad. Why did God do all these horrible things? Like, those aren't consistent with the whole perfectly moral thing because they have moral progress, because their own internal morality has progressed since the time it was written, and see like, oh, that's actually not a good thing, even though the God claims to be perfectly good. So we need to try to figure out a way to like squeeze it into today's morality.
All right. Thank you so much. My best friend, Mr. Delicious, welcome back.
How you doing, man?
What's up? Hey, so ask a question or something. Keep it relevant. If
Definite.
And then I do have, just so we know before, so I don't have to interrupt people, I have 3 other people waiting in line.
It's going to be quick. It's going to be quick.
Please.
So I believe objective truth comes from God. And if I believe I'm able to establish my God, everything that you just stated means nothing. It's all irrelevant. So I have 2 propositions that demonstrate my God is God. First one, he is the author of the 7-day cycle. And he predicted the universal application of the 7-day cycle as a sign of his authority over all nations, which demonstrates universal power. So you're submitted to his will as stipulated in scripture. So by that example, I just demonstrated that he is the moral authority.
What's the 7-day cycle?
7-day week. I'm sorry, 7-day week.
What is like, is 7-day week a part of like the solar system or something? Like, what is this? What is it?
No, it has nothing to do with nothing except for what he commanded. He said the 7-day cycle or the 7-day week is his sign, authority over all nations. He said in the beginning that he's the author, and he would use the 7-day cycle as a demonstration of his power by submitting all nations, because every other nation kept a different cycle.
So the 7-day week is made up. The 7-day week is made up by humans. That's not a prediction. Like you said, it was he predicted the 7-day week. There's no prediction.
The Bible, we have accounts in the Bible that dates at least 2,000, 3,000 years old. So 2,000 years ago, let's go 2,000 years ago. Let's not go 6,000 years. 2,000 years ago, it's written that Jesus would submit the earth to a 7-day cycle. 2,000 years ago, we can look historically, only Israel kept a 7-day cycle. So we see the domino effect from 2,000 years ago to 1929 when the USSR was submitted to a 7-day cycle. So that is the demonstration of power. Do you have a logical response to that?
Yeah. So your argument is that there is an all-powerful being who created the world, and we must obey because human beings, chose to adopt 7-day and arbitrary.
You're saying human agency. You're saying human agency, but again, you have not provided any historical account that demonstrates that the 7-day cycle was through human agency. I just gave you a prediction, and I told you that all nations kept a different cycle for religious purposes.
Okay.
And every nation has been submitted to a 7-day cycle as predicted.
Well, okay. Let me
have a response against the prediction.
Let me clarify. So,
yes,
in the Hindu texts predict the age of the Earth. They said the Earth is 4.3 billion years old. They give an exact mathematical value for the age of the Earth. That's a damn good prediction. See, that's a prediction, a real prediction, because they predicted something about the universe. You predicted a feature that some cultures adopt 7-day weeks.
Hold up, pull up, TJ Jump. I don't know which reality, because I heard you say a lot of things, and it seems like you're disconnected from reality.
I said two things.
Every nation is submitted to a 7-day cycle, so it's universal power. I don't know about this 4.2. I don't agree with those.
Apologies. The point I'm making here is that the Hindus predicted something that's objectively true about the world. You're predicting
it's not
something
objectively true. You can't tell me it's 4.2 billion years. It has been changing throughout the years. People cannot give me an accurate.
You're missing the point. You're missing the point. So,
okay, so go ahead.
A prediction, you need to predict something about the universe. Predict something that's not a human social construct. You're predicting a human social construct. They're predicting a fact about the universe. So
it's not a fact. But go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead. It's not a fact, but go ahead.
The age of the Earth is a fact. Whatever the age of the Earth is, that's a fact about the universe. Right?
It's been changing, but go ahead. Throughout the ages, it's been changing.
So whatever the age of the Earth is, that's a fact about the universe. It could be 6,000, could be 4 billion. Whatever the age of the Earth is, that's a fact about the universe, right? And the days of the week isn't a fact about the universe. That's a fact about human culture, right?
I just told you it has nothing to do with the fact of the universe. It has to do with a prediction that God says that you will be keeping because He said so. This is the law of cause and effect. This is all I'm saying. You're submitted to the person that you say you don't agree with or you don't honor. You don't honor God, right?
No.
His will.
Go back.
So power over you.
The point I'm making here is that the prediction that is a fact about the universe is better than a prediction about human culture. Making a prediction
relevant. Are you submitted to a 7-day cycle?
No.
Can you change it? Exactly.
Yes.
He said you would be. So what else do I need?
No. I said no. I said I'm not submitted to a 7-day cycle. I could change it to an 8-day cycle today. I could just say, okay, I'm going to add another day of the week. Yes, I can.
No, you can't. You live in a nation that is.
I'm going to name it a Derek Day. We're adding a Derek Day. Everybody, we're adding a Derek Day. It comes after Sunday and before Monday.
You must think you're God or something. But here's the fact: you live in a nation. You live in a nation that is submitted to a 7-day. Well, listen. I know you're disconnected from reality, but the reality is your nation is submitted to a 7-day cycle.
Delicious. I let you come here all the time, bro. You know.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So hear me out. Just hold on, real quick. Let me say one thing.
Okay.
I see you in the chat. I see you down below. I bring you on anyway, and I already know that we're going to have disagreements.
Okay.
So I ask that you are as much as you can be polite and listen as much as you can, because I know that you want us to hear you out. You want us to believe that what you're saying is true, and I understand that. I respect that, even if I don't agree. The bottom line is I want to allow dialogue with my guests and allow you to be able to talk with people.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I just want us to be able to have communication because I know things can get very
But Derek, I apologize. I was too aggressive. Can I just understand before I leave? I just need to understand what is the TJ Jump argument. Is he saying that the nations are not submitted to a 7? Because he said he could change it. So is he saying that he's disconnected himself from society and the reality of what we're living? Every nation keeps a 7-day cycle. It's been predicted. All of this could. I'm sorry, give me one nation that doesn't keep a 7-day cycle.
The Javanese calendar does not keep a 7-day cycle. The Javanese people don't. I don't. I just invented a new week that has the Derek Day.
It's not a civic calendar.
Mr. Delicious. Check it out.
Those people.
Okay.
Yeah, let him talk. And if you don't, I can't have you. Come on, man. We gotta be respectful. Go ahead, TJ.
So the calendar represents the days that the people use. So if there's a people that use a calendar that isn't 7 days, they are not submitted to a 7-day cycle. So there are people, the Javanese people, who don't have a 7-day cycle. The Javanese people, Google the Javanese calendar, you can find them in 2021, that they don't have a 7-day cycle. They have an 8-day cycle.
I agree with what he just said, but he missed the part that's really important. It's not the civic calendar. I said every nation has been submitted to a 7-day cycle, so they're under the authority of that nation. So they're submitted as well. Even though, like you can keep an 8-day and do your own calendar, but you're under the authority of your government. So the Javanese are under the authority of their government, which keeps a civic calendar that has 7 days in a week.
No, it doesn't.
Nice try.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Their culture keeps an 8-day calendar. Their government keeps an 8-day calendar.
Can you put it on the screen? Show me a civic calendar. I'll cut my tongue if you could do that. Produce that, and I will become an atheist today.
Okay.
Show me.
You want me to share? Derek, can you Google?
Put it on the screen. Put it on the screen.
Okay, so after this, I've got 3 people waiting in the chat.
No problem.
Derek,
I will become an atheist on this show
Google?
now.
Derek, could you Google Javanese, Java like coffee, Javanese? people or Javanese calendar. He wants to see the calendar. Javanese calendar.
All right.
Civic calendar. I want civic.
Okay. Javanese civic calendar. Calendar.
I don't even know what. Okay, hold on.
The.
All right. You want me to share my
Javanese
screen
calendar.
or something so that you guys can actually see what I'm looking at?
Sure.
Let me do this here.
The Javanese is in Indonesia, right? So you got to show me Indonesia has a 8-day week.
Javanese calendar. You go to images if you want.
Okay, let me go there. Images. All right.
And is there a good one there? I can't really see the picture. So Javanese calendar.
Do you want to share your screen on mine? I mean, you can share it and I'll just add it.
Derek, in the meantime, can you make it clear to the people that I'm asking for a civic calendar, which the Javanese are within Indonesia. So you would have to go to Indonesia to show me that the Javanese civic calendar.
The Javanese calendar is a calendar of the Javanese people. It is used concurrently with two other calendars, the Georgian calendar and the Islamic calendar. The Georgian calendar is official calendar of the Republic of Indonesia and civil society, while the Islamic calendar is used by Muslims and the Indonesian government, and the Javanese calendar is used by the main ethnicities of the Java Island. So the Java Island is the civic calendar, or the Javanese calendar is the civic calendar of the Java Island.
You will never show me where it says the civic calendar. I'm just telling you,
the Javanese calendar is used by the main ethnicities of the Java Island.
Do you understand? A civic calendar has to do with nations.
Yeah,
I'm looking at the source right now. Is that a nation?
Mr. Delicious, we're gonna have to do this again. Look, I always let you back on.
I was gonna become an atheist, but he was not able to produce. I was gonna become an atheist right now if he could show me a civic calendar, because I want the people to understand. Because you said Javanese, people don't know what that is.
Here's the deal. Here's the deal. The bottom line is if we all worked off of a particular thing as humans, it wouldn't prove that the God you're talking about came up with this. So you could say that your God did, but you couldn't prove that. You would just say, my God is the one who came up with this. Look, I got an ancient text.
Burma, the Burmese version of this calendar.
You're wanting to do this, TJ.
Yeah, I mean, this is such a silly prediction. I love this. Burmese calendar.
Now Burma. What happened with Javanese? What happened to the Javanese?
Well, I proved the Javanese, and you weren't happy with that one, so I went to another one, Burma.
But are you telling your people that Javanese is a nation?
Yes, their Javanese island is a nation. Yes.
Okay, no problem. So listen to your friend TJ Jump. He's just said the Javanese are a nation, and you can Google search this. Javanese is within Indonesia. Indonesia is the nation. But here is TJ Jump. I'm gonna clip this. This is the funniest thing I heard. Javanese is a nation. What's the flag for the Javanese nation, my friend? Are they in the United Nations?
Do they need a flag? Like, do you want me? I can get a country.
Nations?
I can buy an island.
Do I need a passport?
Wait, stop talking. So I can buy an island, name it the T-Jump country, and give it an 8-day week, and then your entire worldview's been destroyed.
Yeah, you could do that. That when you can do it. But Indonesia.
I can just call a billionaire. I can call a billionaire. Name your island, whatever. Get a flag and have an 8-day week, and you're going to destroy this guy's flag.
I will become an atheist.
Okay.
The Javanese are within Indonesia. Geography, please.
Mr.
Everybody check it out. So this TJ Jump guy, your hero, Javanese is in Indonesia.
So
you have a nice day, my friend.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Elon Musk disproved this guy's religion by giving an 8-day week to his island. Oh God. What great evidence.
So we've got 3 other people, and I know you like to debate. So I was like, okay, let me get these super chats.
That was beautiful. Thank you for letting me continue that for a little bit.
Yeah, I've let Mr. Delicious. He's actually, in as much as he wants to talk, and like prove his point. I got a sweet spot for him. I don't know. I like to bring him on every once in a while. He might get on some people's nerves, but it's like, it just, to me, like, you got to see people like that sometimes to kind of get where people are coming from. For me, it's like, prove that your God made the 7-day week. For me, it's like, if you can't prove that, sure, societies can can all systematically go under a particular umbrella of ideas or whatever it might be. We all use metric system one day because my God said that it's true, and then someone comes on and they got decibel or something. We can come up with whatever, and next thing you know, I'm proving God. Well, you're not proving anything. You're just making a statement, in my opinion. Stop Scamming Man. He says, can you back up your claim? A Hindu writing says Earth is 4.3 billion years old, as opposed to revisionist rereading of text to complement modernity.
Yes, that is actually just the text itself gives actual numbers to each of the words, like in the original texts. And if you calculate them out, they say 4.3 billion years. You can just Google age of Earth, Hinduism or whatever, and then go to the actual texts, or not. It's not Hinduism. It's I forget the name of the text. The name of the text specifically says the Earth is 4.3 billion years old or something, and you can do the actual calculations from the text.
Okay, you answered it, I guess. Are you looking it up?
Yeah, I've answered it. You can actually, it's the Bhagavad Gita. So in Hindu cosmology, the age of the Earth is 4.3 billion years. 1 day of Brahma, that is 1,000 times the sum of 4 yugas in 4 years, or the creator of a kalpa. So yeah, they actually have this all mathematically calculated out.
Are you sure that it's not a modern? I think his point is, as opposed to revisionist rereading of text to complement modernity.
This is not a revisionist rereading. They literally give numbers of years and then have the words next to them. There's no revision here. They literally give the numbers.
I just reading the super chat here. So, okay, I don't know about that. I've never got into it. Eventually, I plan on, of course, opening Hinduism and getting into that stuff. I'm into all sorts of weird stuff on my channel. Crossover Maniac says Moon is a 28-day cycle, making each quarter lunar cycle 7 days. There's your source for a 7-day cycle. So there's your cosmological. There's your not my God said, but here's the kind of, I guess, from an Earth's perception, a man's perception looking up. This is where you would say, hey, we have a 7-day cycle from this. Does that make sense?
Sure. I mean, we're definitely not subjected to a 7-day cycle, so we can make up whatever days or weeks we want.
I'm making the point. I think he's trying to say, look, you don't need a book or a God saying this. You can look at the lunar, you can look at how things are here on Earth and come up with these observations. Natural law.
Well, I'd actually be more interested where it actually predicted there's going to be a 7-day cycle somewhere, and that wasn't already known, because we already knew this, like at the time all the Bibles were written, so it's not really a prediction.
Right. It's hard to get a word in. With Mr. Delicious. Highly recommend everyone check out Mark Pasio's Natural Law seminar on YouTube. Beware, God and belief systems are shaken to their foundations here. Well, thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate it. Natural Law. And I think we've caught up on super chats. Now we're off to eFont. eFont, welcome to MythVision. You had a video. I'd love to see your video, but it popped on and off. And what's up, man? Can you hear us?
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me on. I truly appreciate both you guys. It's a great conversation.
Thank you.
Question for TJump. TJump, I know in the past you said that any imposition of will would be immoral.
Yep.
Do you prescribe to the libertarian politically, in a political sense, libertarian frame of view? I see you more as a liberal, progressive.
Yeah, so I'm more to the left. I think that the liberal idea of pure freedom is the most moral, but it's not the best that could actually work in society. So I think that in order to make it work in society, I think the more a left-leaning centrist. I think that viewpoint is more pragmatic than the libertarian approach. Even though I think the libertarian approach mirrors what a moral world would look like, it's not the most pragmatic. It's not the most sensible to use in reality.
That makes sense. Would you say taxes per se are
immoral? Yes.
Contrary.
Yes, taxes are theft.
It can be beneficial.
Yeah, so I absolutely think that forcing people to pay taxes without their consent is evil and immoral, but it's pragmatic. Like, it's useful. We can pay for healthcare, fire hydrants, everything that we need to benefit society. So it's a useful evil that we force people and steal their money to benefit society. So it's immoral, but very pragmatic.
All right. Well, that's all I got. I appreciate you both.
Thanks for waiting so long, man. I know you were waiting forever in the chat.
My internet's horrible here. So. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you. Thank you for the kindness and popping on and showing your face. So thank you.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
You have a good one. Bye. Awesome. Interesting question. didn't expect that. So we got a couple more in the chat. Deuce is Wild. What is up? Welcome to MythVision.
Hey, how's my volume?
Loud.
Nice and loud.
All right, cool. If you hear echo, just let me know and I'll just mute it in the interim. So
can you turn it down just a smidge if you don't mind? Just to
yeah,
save it. It's a little loud.
Does Streamlabs give you like individual volume options for each of the speakers?
I'm on StreamYard.
StreamYard.
Yeah.
How's this?
That's a little better. Yeah, go ahead. Ask your question or make a comment.
So just some comments on morality, but to preface it, in atheism, there's it's like a move to get away from notions of God, right? Would you guys say that, personally, you guys are also trying to move away from religious thinking?
Well, if by religion you mean worshiping a god, yes. But other than that, no. Like the cultural Christian, I think, is perfectly fine. Like if you have someone who says having a society to meet together and hang out with and talk to and depend on and have people with similar values who you can trust, I think all that stuff's good. I think that religion has had a lot of positive impacts on society over the past several thousand years. And so a lot of those social habits are actually a really good thing that we should definitely keep. So I definitely would not say that atheism is trying to get away from all religious habits or hobbies, just the God thingy and a lot of the immoral ones.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess that's fair to say. The reason why I asked is it's basically because of this. If someone's desire is to reach a really consistent, truthful position, to me, it makes sense to just drop the notion of morality altogether, because to me, morality always seems to be its personal preference or perhaps collective preference, sprinkled with this magic fairy dust that gives it a religious weight. So right and wrong is a type of superstitious thinking. I think it was Hume that said you can't bridge that is-ought gap without making an appeal to sentiment. So in your moral structure, T-Jump, you say the best of all possible worlds, and that's where I see the personal value judgment. I can't see how that's not based on anything but sentiment. Last comment: if you say, well, I'm appealing to certain things turning out a certain way, and there's a right way and a wrong way to get those goals met, then I would say that right way doesn't imply rightness in a moral sense, but rightness in a correct procedural sense, and that doesn't have to have any like religiosity tied to it. What are your thoughts?
Right. So my view has no oughts. There's no oughts in my morality at all. Mine is not on personal preference. Mine is on an objective law of nature. So I think there's a law of nature like gravity, which is the moral law. And we interpret that through our subjective interpretations, our subjective feelings. Like I see an object in front of me. It looks like a TV screen. Someone else may see it in a different way or a different light or whatever. We're both seeing the same object. So we have our subjective intuitions, which are reflective of something that I think exists in reality. And that thing is objective. So our subjective interpretations are irrelevant. It makes no difference to objective morality whatsoever. I would suggest reading more contemporary moral philosophy. We've made quite a bit of progress since Hume. The is-ought distinction, again, is not really that significant in many moral fields. It's just like the majority of philosophers, 60-something%, are moral realists, even though they're also mostly atheists.
I'll definitely look into that. One last thing. The reason why I have trouble with that is because when you identify some objective thing in the universe, you're characterizing morality almost like a type of physic. But,
yep.
With physics, say like gravity, you don't see any imperatives in your behavior that are implied. Whereas when you say something is right or wrong in a moral sense, there's an implied imperative behavior. And I don't see how you're coming to that.
Right. So it's easy that imperative normativity oughtness is very easy to debunk. That's not a part of morality. You don't need it. Is something moral because you ought to do it, or ought you do it because it's moral based off some independent criterion? Like how would you intuitively answer that question?
I see what you're getting at. I guess I hadn't separated the imperative from the recognition of a thing being right or wrong, but I guess I just have trouble with the notion of right. The word right. You wouldn't say that gravity pulling things down is right or wrong, would you?
No, because gravity isn't the moral law. I'd say that our usage of the term right is to describe the moral law. So it's not that the word right is the goal. We use the word right to describe something that exists. There is some moral law, and that law defines what is right, or what we use the word right to define.
Wouldn't this make death itself immoral?
If you don't consent to it, yes.
I mean, I'd hope that that at that point, then it becomes, in Christians' eyes, it's an entity. It's oftentimes they view death as an entity, but it's just interesting to think about.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So like every year, 60 million people die from age, cancer, whatever. So essentially every year, the number of people Hitler killed in World War II die without their consent. So I would say that the best word to describe that isn't bad. Like many people critique my morality by saying that, oh, well, you say nature is bad, nature is evil. And how can you say nature is evil? Well, it kills 60 million people a year. Like what word best describes the fact that 60 million people have their lives taken from them without their consent every year? I mean, evil and immoral seem to be really good words, a lot better than just saying it's bad. So yeah, I think that death is bad, and it's something we should solve because it's an evil part of this world that shouldn't be here.
Interesting. Deuces, thank you so much. I've got someone else in the chat. If you want to make one more comment or question, and then I'll let you go, my friend.
No, that was pretty much it. I'll think about what he said. Thanks for the time.
Thank you for coming on. Have a good one. Yeah, just an interesting thing. I was thinking our existence alone by that idea is we're kind of evil, period. I mean, our existence is going to, in effect, force, based on what you're suggesting, we have to eat. I'm sure that there's no consent from the trees or from the plants or from, other potential life forms that we live off of. So I don't know. It kind of forces us to have to commit this evil, even though we're not going to cook for it in hell.
Trees and plants aren't conscious, so it's not immoral to kill them because it's not an involuntary position of will. So I think that vegans are morally correct. Vegans are correct that animals are conscious, and killing them is immoral because they can suffer. They have
are you a
will.
vegan?
No, I'm immoral. So I grant
you
that the vegans are right.
Purposely sinning. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Yes, I grant I am an immoral human being who likes cheeseburgers, and I grant that vegans are morally correct. But cheeseburgers, that is my justification, and I just say I'm immoral. So I'm an immoral person who likes cheeseburgers. But yeah, I think that vegans are morally correct, that killing animals, anything with consciousness, is wrong. And once we get to the best of all possible worlds, all of that will be solved. There will be no killing of any other conscious agent. It will be physically impossible to force any conscious agent to do anything they don't consent to. And that is the true best moral world.
It sounds like you're atheist heaven.
Yes.
Honestly, it literally sounds like
Yep.
you have come up with an atheist heaven, except you're saying instead of it being fictitious and a myth that isn't going to happen, you're hoping we can create it.
Yeah, I'm not saying like you don't get there when you die. That's like we have to build it. We have to scientifically get to the point where we can control physics enough to actually build this universe. Like a big step will be the computer simulation thing. If anybody who wants to can upload their consciousness to a computer, they can be in this universe where they just design their own and no one can force them to do anything they don't consent to. That will be a step in the right direction for the people who would like that. So yeah, I'm saying that there is an atheist heaven. There is a best way the world could be. It's a world where it's impossible to force anyone to do anything they don't consent to. And you don't get there by dying. You get there by progressing science and building it ourselves.
I hope Thanos is not a real person, because at this point you got me thinking. No, I'm kidding. Crossover Maniac. When I said contractual, I mean it reciprocate. It's reciprocated and not one-sided. If you don't respect the rights of others, then why should your rights be respected? It's a good point. What do you think?
I'm not sure, because like a contract is something like you agree to, like both parties sign the contract. So it's like a social contract theory, kind of how I interpreted that. So I don't know how he would apply this to morality. Like if you're saying that you should just the golden rule where it's saying you should treat others as the way you should be treated, like, yeah, that's a good starting point. It's not the end point. Like there's a better version of the golden rule, which is you should treat people the way they want to be treated rather than a contract kind of a thing. But yeah, a contract seems to signify that you're like agreeing to some set of rules with another person, which, I mean, that's fine in some contexts, but like if the contract is forced or if it's unfair, then it's not so fine. So the contract thing is just not a good model. Contractually based morality isn't really great.
Okay. Yeah, that was based on this previous one. And I just found out, family, we're going to be really good. I can scroll up now, like to previous super chats way up there. So I don't have to worry about like losing super chats and having to find out who I missed and all that. So anyway, yeah, that was his original comment there. And we're going to bring on our guest in the chat here. I'm just making sure I didn't miss anything. All right. I have a hard time. I don't know if I could pronounce this. Terranigma is
That's
a
good.
game for you. Yeah, welcome to MythVision, my friend. How are you?
Sorry, I need to go.
Huh?
He said, "Sorry, I need to go," in the text in the private
did he?
chat.
Okay. Well, okay, I didn't see that. Sorry, I need to go. Literally last second, my friend. You're right here. All right.
No, now he says he's here,
He's here. All right, bringing him on. What's up?
but not live. I'm confused.
Hard to know. Okay, so he's probably hanging out in the chat or something. I don't know. All right. Well, I guess, do I post this one more time? Do you have time for one more caller?
Sure.
All right, here we go. Yeah, I post this out like if you're coming to hang out, it's not a hangout where you just come and like hang out and sit in the lobby and things like that. It's like when you come on, it's purposely to join the show. So I'm going to be bringing you on and that kind of thing. That's the whole goal of this. Last caller. I'm going to type that here. Whoever beats to the punch and joins on can ask a question. And then we're going to let you go. T-Jump, I do want everybody to go subscribe to your YouTube channel and see where you join in the debate. You're constantly debating. You're constantly having conversations. While we're waiting on someone, when's the last time you've dealt with Darth Dawkins? When's is he done with you?
Yeah, last time I talked with him was on my Discord when I hosted a AMA with Dr. Josh, Digital Hammurabi. Darth Dawkins joined my Discord to come yell at Digital Hammurabi for being an agnostic or something. But I did want to mention, I really appreciate you, Derek, having people to host conversations and invite people on and start debates. I've been trying to like train people on my Discord to do this. It's actually really hard. Most people are not willing to actually like send out emails and like invite people on their show. It's a really hard thing to get people to do. And so I want to just say that thank you. I appreciate you and I appreciate other YouTubers who regularly do these kinds of things. It's a cool thing.
I'm more a fan of dialogue and conversation than debate, so to speak. And debate, if it's done right, sure. But like usually it's a what measuring contest, and it's like I'm right, you're wrong, not really like trying to just discuss why we think what we do. I'm more into that because at the end of the day, I don't think we have a choice. I'm not gonna say we don't eventually make decisions that lead us into believing in things, but it's not that easy. It's not a light switch. Oh, you showed me evidence. Gosh, the 20 years I've invested in this religion. Good point. Bye. It's not that easy. It's far more complex psychologically and stuff. So thank you, ScholarVid, joining. And I appreciate you, man. Welcome.
Hey there. Hey, Derek, T-Jump. How are you guys doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
Good.
Good. I have a question about morality. Don't you guys think that the debate about morality, it being absolute or relative, is too reductive? And my point is this. Shouldn't we be focusing in the difference between static and evolutionary? Because I think we have abundant evidence showing that the morality is actually evolutionary. We used to be at dawn of civilization. The well-being of the common well-being was not necessarily a priority then. We move on to make commercial changes. We have realized that eventually, if we did not spend most of our time killing each other, it would be better for the common good. And then we arrived at this point in time. Isn't it a bit more relevant to be discussing between static or evolutionary morality?
Not really, because discussing whether morality changes, in that way, I mean, obviously morality changes, but what we care about is it moving towards something? Because if we're just going to admit that it's evolutionary and subjective to the evolutionary context, then it could change to anything. You could say drowning babies is moral as a possibility if it's just purely evolutionary. But we want to say, no, there's probably some moral statements that are objectively true, that this evolution is moving towards us to try and get us to this end point or to the correct moral principles. And so it's more interesting to say, what is evolutionary morality leading us to? What is it? What are the things that it can't get wrong? What are the things that can't change across time? or that if it do change, that they're just incorrect, and to not simply grant that, oh, well, since it's evolutionary, it could just make us feel anything, therefore anything could be moral. I think that the subjective relative implications of simply granting that it's purely evolutionary and there's nothing more to it are probably wrong. It's probably wrong to say it's just evolutionary. That's why most philosophers are moral realists. It's probably not the case that murdering babies could be moral under the correct evolutionary context. Evolution probably could not make that a true statement. So I think that understanding morality as a purely evolutionary product is probably incorrect. I think there's probably more to it out there that we don't know about yet. Like, for example, the way to prove this would be to travel to other universes or whatever, or other galaxies. If there are other kinds of life, like in Stargate or Star Trek or whatever, they will all kind of converge on a similar moral principle, even if they didn't evolve, even if they're computer-based life or whatever, AIs or things that were cloned or whatever. Their morality will probably mirror our morality, which means if there are non-evolutionary life forms that have a similar morality, that means that morality isn't evolutionary. There's something more to it. I think that's probably going to be the case.
Right. But even if we don't declare, for example, well-being as the rule, I think tacitly we're going to be eventually tending towards it. I don't think there is any way for us to avoid the common well-being as the ultimate goal.
Well, sure, but we're like, well-being isn't really well defined. That's why people critique Sam Harris. Like, moral philosophers aren't really a big fan of Sam Harris's model, because well-being is pretty arbitrary. But obviously, our goal is going to be something related to consciousness, to conscious desires, to wills of some kind, and then the goal is to create the model that best describes that. Because if it was purely evolutionary, then your statement would be false. It could be the case that more evolution could design us or to evolve us in such a way that we want to destroy well-being, and that would be just as valid. So if your statement is true, that our ultimate goal is to pursue well-being, then morality has to be something than purely evolutionary. There has to be some objective grounding there. Otherwise, your statement wouldn't be the case. It would just be the case that it's currently well-being, and that in the future it may not be.
Got it.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you for
Thank
joining
you.
me, man.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah. All right. I've got one more question from James Apperson. I hope I'm saying that right. And then I want to let everybody know where to go to help people. Cool. James, go ahead and shoot your question, my friend.
All right. So real quick, if in this future utopia, let's say humanity manages to create this, and I certainly hope that they do, is there going to be a place in that utopia for theists? Sure. If not, then why not? And if so, then why are we billing it as an atheist utopia?
Yeah, absolutely. So every single conscious being would get their own universe. So if you're a Christian and you want to have your own universe and design it with a religious connotation to it, it's totally fine. Or like even Hitler would be able to have his own universe, design it however he wanted to, but he couldn't force any other beings to be in his universe and live by his rules. So every single being, Christian, religious, good, bad, moral, immoral, you all get your own universe. But the limitation is that you can't force anybody else to be there. You can invite them and they can choose to join. You can choose to make a universe with other people or visit other people's universes, but you can never force another being to enter your universe. So yeah, absolutely. Religious people will also get their own universes and they can do whatever they want with them.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Yeah, it makes me think the Mormons have been on to something here, ladies and gentlemen, or we're living in one right now. Who knows?
Who designed this universe? They must be garbage.
Oh, look. Apostate Prophet is a good friend of mine. He says, terrible question. I know right from wrong because I'm always right. That's right. No, you know your wife, okay, will shut you down in a heartbeat when you try to pull that one, bro.
You know what? I wonder what happens if he says everything I say is a lie. What happens to the universe if he says those words?
I don't know. What would happen? Look, seriously, man, I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate you coming on here. And I love listening to the debates you get involved in all the time. Trying to educate people to, think critically and to hear a different perspective. Go to his, is this a Patreon? Yeah, go to his Patreon. I got all three pulled up. So I'm like patreon.com/TJump. Help support him to get another chair, okay? Chairs are gods. He's trying to get, an advanced chair, if you will. You can join for various whatever amount you're able and willing to. Right here, you
join at the $1,000 level. Yes, for sure.
Yeah, you're the god of gods if you do that, for sure. You have some goals you're trying to meet, but what do you do with your Patreon for your members? Like, what is it?
Porn, mostly. No.
OnlyFans, secret OnlyFans.
Hot Blonde Fund. Mostly I just invest it into my business. Like what I'd like to do, I'm saving up money to start my atheist church. I'd like to buy a church location, get an atheist pastor from like the Clergy Project to come down and host events regularly, host TED Talks, conversations, invite speakers, partner with other college atheist universities, student groups to do these events regularly. I'd like to build like an actual atheist church to do these events. That's what I'm probably going to invest most of my saved money in, is to build an atheist church.
Interesting, with different atheist pastors, the whole nine. You know, your flock will be taken care of. Don't worry, this good shepherd will have you taken care of. Also, the YouTube channel. Make sure you go subscribe. I put that down in the chat. I'll put it again to make sure everybody knows. I am a shameless plug. If you know me,
appreciate it.
You know me by now. I don't play games. I let everybody know how much I appreciate my guests, but also like sometimes we need that little link right there in the comment section so we can click it, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, show the community that, you know, we enjoy these ideas and these topics. You may not agree with T-Jump on almost everything. Well, guess what? If you hit that bell, you can go and harass him when he goes live.
So Derek, is this some passive aggressive stuff? Are you like sending your followers to attack me now?
Dude, we're going to talk after. Okay? Seriously, he also has the merchandise. You can check out the t-shirts. If you want a chair on your shirt, you can't go wrong. I mean, that right there protects you from all the demonic powers. Jinn are afraid of it, the whole nine. Like, they have something against chairs, just like some cats have against cucumbers. If there's something about it, I don't know. We've talked about this off air, T-Jump. Demons are afraid of chairs, and we figured that out. So go get a shirt. Help the community. Is there anything I have missed? Is there anything that you would like to plug that you have coming up?
Yeah, we're going to meet in Texas and go to Derek's. Derek invited me to his hotel room after the thing. He mentioned that previously.
Dude, I told you. Now I got to tell him how much I'm paying you for it and all of that. That's no. Seriously, I'm going down to this Faithless Forum. It'll be in Texas a week and a half from now, something like that, 2 weeks, and we're gonna see each other in person. I'm gonna be meeting other YouTubers. Hopefully, I can get you guys in a private session for an OnlyFans situation. But seriously, like, I want to get some content with you guys with my camera gear. I got a couple of these, hanging out at the house to record. Yeah. And we'll make some content for all the YouTube world to check us out. So if you're a patron of MythVision, you can ask questions and I'll try to ask them of these gentlemen and ladies, of course, too, that I'll be trying to make some content, let you guys see. I think Holy Kool-Aid and Modified Skeptic?
Genetically Modified Skeptic?
I think he'll be there. I know that, Cosmic Skeptic is going to be there. There's so many names.
No, Alex O'Connor backed out. He's going to do a digital thing. He cannot travel.
Okay. Well, there's going to be people there. That's it.
Yes.
And I'll be getting some interviews with you, so I look forward to it.
Yeah, most importantly, I'll be there. That's what really matters.
That's really the reason. Yeah, I was gonna say nobody else matters. If Holy Kool-Aid's watching this, dude, I'm don't take it personal. Okay. No, but seriously, man, I appreciate you, man. Let's do this again. We just talked about morality. There were different ideas I was floating around on what I would like to talk to you about. Oh, one more thing. I heard. And I don't know anything about this. I don't get into politics. I don't get into anything. But I heard some controversy where a lot of people disagree with you on something. What is that something? Even in the atheist community, what is that something you are controversial for?
Oh, yeah. So I vehemently oppose many of the SJW arguments. Like, I'm not against diversity or inclusivity. Like, I'm totally for that. Like, my morality specifically says these are good things. But I think a lot of the arguments that the social justice feminist community are just garbage. Like, one of the ones, like the one that's really, really considered like bad is like the saying trans women are not women. They say that's always transphobic. There's no way for that not to be transphobic. And I'm like, wait, this is just a basic fact of language. If somebody is brought up in a community where the word gender and sex are synonymous, they're not being transphobic. That's just the way they were brought up. Like, there's no bigotry there. So you can't simply say anybody who says this is transphobic. It could just be the way they use the words, and they have no bigotry to it whatsoever. And so their arguments for the feminist community are just as bad as the theistic arguments, like saying anybody who says the word God in vain is a sin. It's essentially the same thing. They're saying, oh, if you say trans women aren't women, it's a sin. And so I think that a lot of the arguments in the feminist community are total garbage, even though I totally agree with their motivations of inclusivity and diversity.
Interesting. So that's caught you a lot of problem there, huh?
Yeah.
I heard not even the details, just, oh, he has something that I disagree with, and I didn't know anything about it. So thank you so much once again, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you go into the description. There's far more links there, of course, to help support him, to support us at MythVision for what we're doing. I've got a lot of stuff coming up I'm looking forward to doing, and thank you for your patience in dealing with some of our guests, of course, that we've had pop on, and dealing with me, the knucklehead host of MythVision podcast. Until next time, we are MythVision.